once again, good afternoon everyone. I am Celine Jane Importo CABASAG, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies student from section Prophet Ezekiel PMGO5. So, I apologize because I am not able to have live reporting today due to internet connection problems. So, in order to make sure that I can report or discuss to you my topic at an exact time, I've chose to have a video reporting instead. So, today, I will be discussing the social groups, types of social groups including the primary, secondary, in and out groups, reference group, and the peer group. And I'll also be discussing the characteristics of groups. So alam naman natin that groups play an important role in the society. Through groups, mas napapabuti yung ekonomiya natin, and groups also are the one who's responsible in the transmission of culture. Just like for example, diba isa yung family sa mga nag-e-exist na social group? So for example, yung parents ng isang individual are Muslims. So when it comes to their children, parents are capable of transmitting their culture to their children kasi they often interact with each other and they can influence each other. And through social groups, when one group interacts with another, parang ito yung nagiging way para malaman ng isang grupo yung tungkol sa isa, and for both groups have better understanding with each other, especially about their differences in many aspects. So let us define first what is social groups. So in sociology, a group is any number of people with similar norms, values, and expectations who interact with one another on a regular basis. So ito yung mga grupo ng mga individuals o kumpol ng mga tao na may iisang paniniwala, interest at layunin. So groups were formed because of the similarities of people, especially in terms of their characteristics. And those who are included in a group or in a particular group, they may share interest, values, ethnic and linguistic backgrounds, and kinship ties. So, ibig sabihin, social groups and members of social groups can be blood-related or not for as long as members who interact with one another share a common cause or interest in the organizational structure. So, bakit nga ba nabubuo yung social group o bakit nga ba nagkakaroon ng iba't ibang grupo yung mga tao? So, groups were made because we people want to establish friendship and to accomplish certain goals and fulfill the social groups that they have acquired. Diba sabi nga nila, no one is an island or no man is an island. Like, makakaya kaya natin kung di tayo nakikipagkomunikasyon sa iba? Makakaya kaya nating gawin lahat ng tayo-tayo lang o without the help of others? So, hindi naman, diba? And life is so boring kung wala tayong kinabibilangan na grupo. And I think it is really impossible to don't have a group where we belong. Kasi, una pa lang, pinanganak pa lang tayo o pinagbubuntis pa lang tayo, we already have a group which is our family. So habang lumalaki tayo, parami ng parami yung mga nakakasalamuhan natin which lead us to have a sense of belongingness. Kaya syempre, di ba, we really want to be with people na comfortable ta. We can express ourselves and so on. So group exists because people seeks for it. We also have this term consciousness of kind. So the concept of consciousness of a kind was introduced by the American sociologist Franklin H. Giddings. So it is the concept that explains the tendency of human beings to join or associate with other people who are perceived to have similarities to themselves. So ibig sabihin nito, yung dahilan kung bakit nakikihalubilo yung mga tao sa iba is dahil nakikita nila yung similarities nila in a particular person. So parang nafe-feel ng isang tao na, ay pareho kami nito, we have this similar type of personality, magkakasundo ko to. So that's one of the steps. Bakit nabubuo yung social group? So, consciousness of a kind somewhat tells us that groups were created because of having same kinds of people that ends up being friends until they found another and the group became bigger. So now let us proceed to the types of groups. So the type of groups includes the primary group, secondary group, in and out group, reference group, and the peer group. So let us start with the primary group. So according to Charles Cooley 1902, primary groups provide face-to-face interaction and feeling of identity to the individual. So primary groups are those groups wherein values and attitudes of members became fused in one's identity. So the interaction among members in the primary group tend to be intimate and personal in nature, and they develop strong emotional bonds with one another that last for a long time. So isa sa mga halimbawa ng mga primary group ay yung family natin. Di ba yung family naman talaga natin, yung pinakaunang grupo na naging kabilang tayo, and they are the one who taught us basic lessons of life. So sa thought pa lang that family builds an individual by teaching basic lessons in life, we can already see that the members have intimate relationship with each other in which it's personal in nature and yung bond nila is strong. So yung mga characteristics ng primary group is that primary groups tend to be small, ordinary, composed of fewer than 15 individuals. So konti lang yung members ng social group. And interaction and communication among members in a primary group tend to be intimate and personal in nature. So just like what I said earlier, primary groups have intimate relationship or they are very close with each other and considers every member na hindi iba sa kanila. Yung sense of belongingness is present talaga. Hindi yun nawawala, which leads the members to have a strong emotional bonds with each other. Kaya syempre, di ba, ang sense of belongingness, the sense of security is present, and even personal life were discussed in this kind of group. So nandito na talaga yung trust with each other. That is why primary groups generally persist over an extended period of time. So nagtatagal talaga yung mga grupong ito kasi they don't treat members as different but are really part of them. So again, primary groups are those that provide face-to-face interaction and the feeling of identity to the individual in which hindi kailangang magpanggap ng miyembro sa ganitong grupo because sense of belongingness occur. And remember, family is the biggest example of a primary group. So next one, let us proceed to the secondary group. Secondary groups are large group of people whose relationship are formal and institutional. So secondary groups were quite different to primary groups because it doesn't last for a long period of time but rather it's just a temporary group. So members of secondary groups lack strong emotional ties to one another and are larger than primary groups and are temporary, anonymous, formal, and impersonal, which is really in contrast to the characteristics of a primary group. And secondary groups were made because of the same interests or preferred activity of members such as the employees, the managers, students, or workers. So yung example ng mga secondary group ay yung mga work-related activities. Diba, hindi naglalast for a very long time. It's just temporary, kaya yung mga taong kabilang sa grupong ito, syempre, hindi rin magiging pangmatagalan yung samahan. And that's as what I've mentioned earlier, secondary groups do not have intimate relationship with one another or don't have a strong emotional bonds with each other. So it happens because yung secondary group, hindi naman strong bonds yung goal nito, but rather just to accomplish something like sa work. Ang daming di nagkakasundo na workers within a company but they are still in one group and they still have the same goal. So intimate relationship lacks and personal ties is absent as it's all about professionalism. Secondary groups also may break down into primary groups when needs are not met. So for example, if an office or in work, di ba, pag di nagkakasundo yung mga workers, everyone tend to look for someone na makakasundo nila, na mapagsasabihan nila ng ideas nila. In simple terms, employees tend to have friends and those friends may have intimate relationship with each other dahil kahit personal things ay napag-uusapan na nila. Another example is in the classroom. Diba, napakarami ng students in one section and the truth exists na hindi naman lahat nagkakasundo and not all have the same personality. That's why maghahanap talaga yung students ng makakasundo nila, ng friends. So, in that example, so that's an example of how secondary group break down into primary groups. The secondary group is the whole class section or the whole section, and the primary group are the friendship made inside the whole section. So in order for you to understand the difference of the primary group and secondary group easily, let me say to you its differences in simple terms. The primary group are generally small in size while secondary are large in size. Primary group also relatively have long period of interaction, while the secondary group has short duration of interaction, or it's just temporary. Primary group has intimate and face-to-face association, while the secondary group has little social intimacy or mutual understanding. And lastly, the primary group is cooperative and friendly, while secondary groups are more formal and impersonal. So now let us proceed to the in-groups and out-groups. So as we all know, there are really a lot of groups that exist in the world. Not only one, not only two, but hundreds and thousands of groups. And the fact is that hindi sa lahat ng grupo ay sangayon tayo o kapag nabibilang tayo ay mararamdaman natin yung sense of belongingness. So it depends really on a group or in a kind of group. There are groups that we can say that we belong, and there are also groups that we can say we don't belong to them or to that particular group. And that's what we are going to discuss, as these characteristics can be described when we talk about the in-group and the out-group. So let us define first what is in-group. So in-group is any group or category to which people feel they belong. So, ito yung mga grupo na nararamdaman ng isang individual na belong siya, yung hindi siya nagiging out of place. For example, is family, di ba? It's a kind of a group in which we can show who we are. It's the group where we can say we really belong to this because they are our family and they are the ones who can understand us, and they are the first group whom we became with even when the time that we're not born yet. Another example is our friends. Of course, we choose to be in a particular group of friends because we feel that we're the same with them. We have the same vibes, or we are comfortable with them. We can express ourselves with them without lying about our personality. So just like family members, they are the ones whom we can trust and we can share everything. So in short, they are the ones whom we can build an intimate relationship. So, when we can see all of these characteristics in a group where we belong, then that is considered as our in-group. Since we can feel na nabibilang talaga tayo doon. Another example is when it comes to religion. When we are Christians and then we saw or encountered other groups that are Christians, even though you don't know them yet, when the fact remains that you and that particular group is having the same characteristics and having the same beliefs and visions in life, then that is considered as your in-group, because even though we haven't encountered them yet, you already know that you belong to them. So in simple words, the in-group is all about those groups who we can feel we are or we can gain the sense of belongingness. On the other hand, we have the out-group. An out-group is a group or category to which people feel they don't belong. So let's try to put our religion as an example again. When you are a Christian and you encountered a group of Muslim people or Buddhists, of course, you can feel that you really don't belong to them because you don't have different visions when it comes to God. You have different beliefs and practices, so that statements describes an out-group because sense of belongingness does not exist. So again, the difference between in-groups and out-groups is that the in-group is the group where we can feel we belong, while the out-group is those groups we can feel we really don't belong. So now let's proceed to the reference group. Reference group is composed of individuals who possess a set of similar characteristics that are used as standards by other individuals and evaluating their own behavior. So yung reference groups, ito yung parang mga grupo ng mga tao na nagiging role model ng iba or ginagaya ng iba, or yung actions nila is nagiging basis ng ibang tao on executing their own actions. So for example, in my real life experiences, I have this reference group which became my basis on what I should do. These are the group of my old schoolmates way back years ago. So their group are really good in studies, and I can really say that since I have seen their achievements way back years ago. They are not a kind of group or a kind of friendship that only think about having fun or going everywhere they want, but rather they have a goal of graduating as honor students, they really did. So about upon witnessing their behavior or their actions, I've told myself that I want to be like them. That's why, nung nagsimula yung desire ko, I've started copying their actions, not literally all their actions, but their views about the importance of studies. So, because of this group, I built my desire of having achievements in school, and I did. So, they became the basis of my actions or became my inspiration on doing my actions. So that group or the group of my schoolmates is considered as my reference group, as I've used them as standards and everything, or on doing everything or doing my actions. So now let's proceed to the peer group. Peer group is made up of versions of relatively equal status with whom an individual interacts frequently. So in simple words, these are our peers, or ito yung mga kaibigan natin. And we also have a voluntary and involuntary groups. If an individual chooses to become a member of a group, then that group can be referred to as voluntary group. So, ibig sabihin, walang sapilitang nagaganap. Kusang sumama yung individual sa group, voluntary without AD4. So, on the other hand, if an individual becomes a member of a group as a result of factors over which he or she has no control, then the group may be referred to as involuntary. So, ibig sabihin, di kagustuhan ng individual na mabilong sa grupo na yan, pero kailangan. For example, is groupings that happens inside the classroom na yung teacher yung namimili ng kagrupo natin. Even if we don't want to be part of that group, since it is the decision of the teacher to put you in that group, then you really have no choice but to be with that group. So, that's an example of an involuntary group because that individual doesn't join the group at his or her will, but rather through the command of others. So we're done with the types of groups, and now let us briefly discuss the characteristics of the groups. So brief lang, since I have already mentioned other characteristics when I've started the discussion, if you can remember. So number 1, even after meetings, the members remain with the group and communicate with one another. 2, all members are identified through similar characteristics. 3, a group has a certain way of mechanism of recruiting members which ensures the group's continuity. And lastly, group members share the same common goals, purposes, or objectives for joining the group. So groups, as I said earlier, exist because a lot of similarities, just like the goals and purposes of individuals, and really communicate with one another even if masasabi natin na hindi tayo nagkakasundo ng mga members. Communication still exists in order to accomplish the main goal, and every group has its own way na makapagpatuloy ang grupo. For example, sa family ng Christians or family of Christians, they really have their own way how they can continue their legacy or how they can stay Christians and how they can have another members. So overall, groups plays an important role in the society, and it comes to different types with different characteristics. So that would be all regarding my report. Thank you so much everyone for listening, and I hope you've learned a lot from my discussion. And now I'll give the floor to the next reporter who will further discuss the following lesson. So again, thank you everyone. God bless you and have a nice day.